Hello, and welcome to another edition of Razorwire. Now, today, we're not talking about technical information security. We're going to bring in the human element, human risk intelligence. What is it? How does it work? Why is it so important in an evolving world of information security? Without further ado, let's explore this. And today, to discuss the matter of human risk intelligence, what it is, how it works, what do we mean by that? I have one of the best people in the market who can explain this to us so we can kind of include this in our deliberations when it comes to information security. And I have Flavius. Flavius, do you want to introduce yourself, who you are, where you come from, what your company is?
My name is Flavius Plesu. I am the founder and CEO of a company called OutThink, a cybersecurity human risk management platform. Previously, I've been a CISO in financial services in banking, and I got really curious, really interested about how do we effectively manage human risk in organizations. And what I realized early on was that simply looking at phishing click rates and knowledge test scores, that wasn't giving us much to work with. We needed some insight, some intelligence, and we thought, hey, ultimately, yeah, we should be able to quantify human risk. I get it; people are unpredictable, but I realized as I started on this journey, I realized there's a lot of research into behavioral science, neuroscience, psychology, and you know what? Yes, it can be quantified. So that's what we mean by human risk intelligence. I think is a platform that's being used by predominantly large enterprise organizations with thousands, tens of thousands of people that really need a way to automate and be able to get on top of human risk to effectively manage that. That being said, we also have smaller customers who are getting value from the solution. But yeah, it's pretty much it's built for those large, complex organizations.
Great, that's great. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, for a long time, there was in the early days up till kind of relatively recently, there's been this kind of big focus on the technological aspect of security. That's all technology, and that's where we need to put all of our tooling, and that's where we need to put all of our efforts. But anybody who's been in this game or been a CISO for any length of time knows that's not necessarily the case. I mean, it is an element. We've obviously got to look after our technology. That's where a lot of attack vectors come from. But that human element has always been one of the more contributing factors, especially in a world of phishing and a world of, the current modern world that we live in. When do you think that shift happened and that recognition happened? Because I can't quite pinpoint in my own experience. I just know that, at some point, somebody, probably yourself actually, and maybe a couple of other people as well, started thinking, what is the human element in this, and what can we start doing to look at predicting potential attack vectors or problems with our security with the human element? Because it is a very complex thing to do if you haven't got experience.
If I reflect back, yes, my 25 years of being in the industry, I first started when I was 17, doing a bit of penetration testing, working for an internet service provider, managing some firewall rules. So I started with technology, and I guess the industry, that's what we started with first. Most of us are technologists, so we went to those technical security controls first. If you remember, we had the old antivirus, probably Bitdefender or AVG or something like that. Now, Dr. Watson.
Yeah, I mean, God, I remember the first kind of like email security solutions that came out, and the internet security solutions. Because I remember a time when companies internet, for instance, was a bit of a wild ride. Back in the NT4 days, it used to cache everything locally to the machines, and I can tell you what, there was some really spicy stuff that we found. And I think for me, that was my realization that there was this human risk element that goes with any organization, because you don't know what the users are doing. And time I would hear when I talk to IT departments, that kind of thing, or business owners, we trust our people. And I just sat there and I thought, well, it's good to trust them, but trust can be broken. Control is much, much better than just relying on trust. Just casting my mind back to some of the cached video files I used to see in those early days that made me realize that not all is what you think it is when you look at someone.
No, absolutely right. We then started putting more technical security controls in place, the firewalls, hardening, the servers, the network security, application security started becoming a thing eventually. And I think at some point the industry thought, hey, look, we got to step up here. Let's start putting some processes in place, some policies, an information security policy, an acceptable use policy. I think that the first one I wrote was called an acceptable use of IT assets. It was just IT, your computer and just some small applications around that. But so it went technical security controls, processes, and I really think people is the final frontier now. And I think someone realized at that point, hey, the user, we have the antivirus running, we have the acceptable use of IT assets policy in place, but people still cause lots of issues. So what can we do? And I guess with that question came an answer. In the early days, I can remember SANS. We all know SANS. They had some training. Back then there was some e-learning, some CBT. People would click through, and then a company called PhishMe came about, and they said, "Hey, look, isn't it going to be great if you phish your users, and then you see who's likely to click?" We also had classroom-based training. Would go around with people in a classroom and PowerPoint slides. But those were the early days. That was the dawn of human risk management, and it wasn't even called human risk management. Does ring a bell? You've been there, right? Jim,
I've been there. I've been there. I've done that. One of the earliest instances where I started to really get concerned about it was, and it was actually quite early on. It was the "I love you" virus. You remember that one?
Yeah,
which was a good example of tricking a human being into doing something, thinking, who's sending me? Why is this person sending me this? And what's this file associated with it? And that's moved on over time to obviously phishing, which we all know very, very well. But then there were also quite a few reports, because there's two types of kind of human aspects to InfoSec, or human risk aspects to InfoSec. You have those who unwittingly go and do something. They click on the phish, they share their credentials. There's stupid things that they shouldn't be doing, but they do. Maybe they've been tricked. I mean, let's look at phishing alone. I don't want to stick to phishing because I know it's only a small aspect of it, but it's a good example. You could spot a phish between 5 and 7 years ago, easy. Just look at the use of language. Now they're a lot more sophisticated, and I've had people come to me saying, "Oh, I've been phished. My boss is unhappy. How do I respond to it?" I had that the other day from a friend of mine. But then you also have the malicious people as well. You have those human beings who, and we've heard about it even recently, IT administrators that have been fired from their jobs, and they've put in, pieces of software or killed all of the admin credentials or changed them all and locked people out. How do we deal with that from a human risk element? I mean, from your perspective, obviously, the training works when it comes to, or hopefully it works when it comes to the general user who is doing the unwitting stuff. And I know that area is changing now as quite quickly as well. But then you have that malicious aspect. How can we deal with that?
I guess let's take them one by one. You're absolutely right. When we say human risk, we have the spectrum. And on that spectrum, at one end, you have the accidental human error. If it's really good, we might click on it. And then you have the people who are violating security policies without a policy exception. You may want to call that a negligence, but it's not quite insider threat. They're not quite there to steal company IP, and then
they're just trying to get around things.
yeah, that's real. In fact, actually, Gartner, we've been doing a lot of work with Gartner, a lot of research, and some staggering numbers came out. Something like 90% of users admitted to bypassing security controls without a policy exception, with full knowledge that they're introducing additional risk to the organization. So the idea that, hey, training would be enough, just train them, they'll get it. It's a bit naive, I guess. And for me, that was it. That's why I started OutThink. Hey, we gotta engage these people. We gotta help them. We gotta help improve that risk understanding. Hey, your actions have consequences, and the impact extends is not just personal, but also the organization, and then beyond. The customers, the trust. We started working on that initially, and we still are. There's lots of gains to be had, even with that user. They're just bypassing security controls, trying to do their job. We can and should engage them better. And then you have the more intentional, more malicious. When we think about the solution, I would point to crowdsourced intelligence. OutThink and other solutions in the market, I'm sure, we integrate with security systems customers have in place. We pick up behaviors, who's doing what's happening. Think your old UEBA. But then we also get to know the human behind the user ID, right?
Mm.
What sort of people do we have here? And for example, we have 16 psychographic segments. This is research by Professor Angela Fuss at UCL in London, talking about, yes, they're a bit unpredictable, but still you can map out certain things. So 16 psychographic segments, one of which is shadow agent. So if you start seeing certain behaviors or certain events coming from people with a psychographic segment shadow agent, perhaps that needs to go up to the SOC and have an alert with a red flag next to it for immediate investigation. And then it's the crowdsourcing piece, right? So you have people across the organization. For many years, we believe that all we can do with those users is tell them how to behave, give them the acceptable risk policy, point them to the training, the funny video plays, you click through the CBT, you get phished, that's it. But what we've learned is the collective understanding of the workforce, of where we might have risk, vulnerabilities, even insiders, that is often greater than that of the CISO and the entire security team. Because, hey, the CISO in the ivory tower, a few security folks, but then the workforce, thousands, tens of thousands of people. We didn't know up until recently how to tap into that collective understanding and how to get that crowdsourced intelligence. But now we can. We're able to engage people. We use natural language processing for almost real-time linguistic analysis, and we pick up all sorts of things. So that intelligence, that's part of human risk intelligence, that really helps the security team reduce the size of the problem and focus on those areas, on those users that can actually do real damage.
That's fascinating, and something that I've wanted for a long time now, because I became very, very aware when I started doing a lot of incident response and investigations into things going wrong. I mean, in certain places that I've worked for in the past, LimeWire, you remember LimeWire and all that kind of stuff, and people were using company resources to download films and music, and they were just either ignorant or blissfully unaware that they were also using resources to share that out. It was all, that was how you got big files back in the day. For all those of you who are young out there, it was pretty bad and it was pretty rife. But they just had kind of like this ignorance thing. But I learned from doing that instant response that there's a story behind everything, and it's not just one event that necessarily causes the incident. It could be several. Let's look at an example. So a salesperson who's looking to exit the company, maybe they've been upset, maybe they didn't get the bonus they wanted, maybe they didn't get the commission for a big piece of work or whatever. We put all kinds of security in, but we don't put security, we haven't until obviously recently started looking at security behind what collection of events looks like it's going to turn into something worrying, like that salesperson. Have they gone in and downloaded the CRM? Are they accessing it at funny times of the day that they wouldn't normally do? Are they starting to try to plug in USB drives to their machine? Are they starting to to try to fiddle around with settings, to try and bypass security controls, technical security controls. It all kind of builds up to a really good story there, which you don't want your CRM data going out to a competitor. That if you had the ability to pull all of those strings together and almost profile each individual, and then provide alerts to who's doing stuff that looks like it's building up to a bit of a sketchy thing. Is that what you're you're talking about?
Yeah, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Things we're seeing with customers, popular use cases to bring it to life. But it's ultimately that, we track over 80 different human risk factors. When you start combining those human risk factors, and we have predictive human risk models, we have found statistically significant correlations between the different human risk factors. And that is a big element in security and incident response. We've always been on the back foot firefighting, and it's often, I guess, most of the time, been too late. But now we can predict such event through those correlations, and then you can take action before any data is lost or stolen. So we use a number of different vehicles to interact with users and learn from them, learn about what's happening in that area of the business, and then surface this intelligence to the security team so they can take those actions more proactively. In a bank, they've used our solution. They pushed out training. One of the things they've trained everyone is on PCI DSS, card holder data numbers. There's all sorts of questions in there, or there's free text where users can type things in, and that's where the linguistic analysis kicks in. So what we found in that bank was we had people telling us in the regulatory affairs department that they are handling cardholder data.
Mm-hmm.
And the bank did not expect that, And then it was something like in excess of 90% of people in this area of the business indicate they're handling that sort of data. That was something, an insight in front of the security team. They took action. They went over to speak with some of those colleagues and understand what's happening. And what they realized was the cards team was probably too busy or a bit lazy. And that principle, need to know and least privileged, that wasn't really happening. So what the cards team was doing was they were just handing out the entire spreadsheet with all the accounts they've created the previous month, with all the account numbers, with all the customer data. All regulatory affairs wanted to know was how many accounts did we open for politically exposed individuals in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
That would a number would have been sufficient. 5, 7, 25. That was it. But instead, cards, they were just, hey, have the full data, have the full spreadsheet. So then all of a sudden, that crowdsourced intelligence, the security team was able to identify, I don't know, is this shadow IT or shadow data, or I don't know what it is, but the solution was really simple. They put a basic process in place that would do the count for the cards team. And once a month, these guys in regulatory affairs would get what they really needed, which was a number. And there you go. That's how they started minimizing data and enforcing those good principles.
No, it's a great example. I mean, I've been a QSA for many years myself, so I know the horror there, and I've come across that a fair bit. Yeah. I mean, do you think that this is going to be a big factor of our defense in depth stack going forward? I mean, it seems to be, because I take it takes a little while for the algorithms that you're using to kind of learn those behaviors behind kind of how the users work, because I take it you've got that kind of psychological sort of profiling that you use within your specific tool. Let's use your tool as your solution as an example, that looks for kind of behaviors that would be consistent with issues. But I take it that there's a learning element that goes on behind the scenes as well. Dave logs on at 7 o'clock every day. If he's logging in suddenly at 3 o'clock with his admin password, then that's a bit of a red flag. Or building that story to what the event may be rather than the individual components of some things. Is that kind of how it's working in your world with your product?
Absolutely. And I guess organizations can do a lot of a lot of this work. They can build things in house, and it would work in a similar way. But when I talk about my product, it's because I have this recency bias. That's what I do every day. Whether you use OutThink or something else, or you build something in house, it would work in similar ways. It takes a while. It's figuring out what normal is, and then also figuring out who Dave is. The person
Yeah.
behind user ID. Very, very important. We've never had that in cybersecurity before. We will stop at the user ID level and go impossible login. That there must be something here, But if you just do that, the response is simply log the account, password reset. You don't really know what the risk is, and you're not really proactively managing much. Right. That pattern, what does normal look like? Who is Dave? Who is James? Who is Sarah? Who is Mary? Right. The psychographic segmentation, the intentions, the risk understanding, the potential productivity impact that might get people circumventing security policies and processes. And then the level of access. We build out this collaboration network. We map out who's working with who in the organization, and then security teams get on top of that. Another story is, we care about protecting all users, but some users are a higher priority than others. So certainly you don't want anything getting anywhere near one of your CXOs, your VIPs. You want to protect those people. And so we've seen another customer, we've plugged in Graph API, Microsoft Graph API, that brings in data around collaboration, has everything else we knew about the people and the level of risk. The CISO was just going through the execs, Ricky, Toma, and the CISO realizes, Ricky's good. Low risk, good. But then they find that Jennifer, that works closely with Ricky, Jennifer, 87% vulnerable to cyber threats. Low phishing resilience, low device security, not install the latest updates, low knowledge, low engagement, all sorts of human risk factors. So at that point, it was really easy to go, right, you, Jennifer, add it to the high risk group. We're going to have a conversation. Because what would have happened if late at night, Jennifer gets an email in her inbox, it looks good, looks like it came from Ricky, asking her to click a link or open an attachment, do something, it's urgent, I'm your boss. And then Jennifer does just that, infects her machine, thinks nothing of it, goes to sleep. Come morning, they've been able to email Jennifer to Ricky, impersonate, and then get to Ricky's inbox. And this sort of human lateral movement attacks. It takes a while to get all of that data and be able to, it's a maturity journey to be able to start anticipating things and predicting things and taking action before something happens. But your question, do I believe this is going to be an important part of cybersecurity of the future? And yeah, absolutely. There's two camps here, I guess. Camp A, hardcore technologists, they believe, and forget about the user. It doesn't even matter. We're going to lock everything down. We're going to block everything. Zero trust. It does not matter. And it sounds great, doesn't it? But have you ever seen that work in practice, Jim, where there's zero reliance on the end user, perfect zero trust, users cannot break security? I've not seen that.
No, I haven't. And to be honest, the most time, the few times that I have seen people go really all out with their information security, the environment is just so locked down you can't do anything. Something easily breaks because they don't have the rights for a patch to be applied, or they start circumventing it. Circumventing the countermeasures you put in place because it's just unworkable. I mean, security has always been about getting that fine line between good security but usable, functional systems and services in place from a cybersecurity perspective. Because otherwise you get your own human workforce working against you to try to circumvent it. And it's important. And I think it's a really important aspect of InfoSec. And I love the fact that under human risk intelligence, you are looking for those more riskier individuals, whether they're a VIP. I mean, let's look at it this way, the people who are most at risk from, let's just use phishing. God, I hate it. I keep using phishing. People in finance. And it's not just the finance director that's at risk. It's anybody in finance, whereas the engineering teams, more often than not, nobody's going to bother targeting them unless it's a blanket fish, which are usually very, very easy to spot. It's the targeted stuff you've got to watch out for. I mean, I've seen it before where disties and vendors have been phished, and then you suddenly get an email through that looks legit, looks all fine, and but it really isn't. And even the best firms get caught by that. So knowing who has a higher risk factor due to their status is very important. But I love the fact that you look deeper than that, and you look at are they engaged with the awareness training? Do they undertake activities that would be considered slightly risky? Are they adjacent to people who, although they have a higher level of awareness and interest in information security, it can all get completely screwed over by the person that they work with the most who couldn't care less. It allows you to tailor your cybersecurity in a lot more of a honed way. Because I guess in many respects, one of the biggest problems that we have in InfoSec is, and I try to explain this to business owners, everybody has incidents. You can't get away from it. There's no such thing as perfect security. One of the really important parts of incident response and recovery from it is understanding the story behind how it happened. How did it happen?
What you learn. Yeah.
Human risk intelligence seems to be almost that missing link that we haven't really done as well as we possibly should have. Why did Mary do what she did? What elements can we spot in the rest of our workforce? And as you say, especially in a big workforce, because when you're a small company, you get a lot more loyalty. Everybody knows one another. But when you get to a certain size, you can't know everybody.
Yeah. And what I think happened there, Jim, was we're spending a lot of time and energy on those technical security controls. 90% of our budgets go towards technology. That's where we feel comfortable. That's the world we know. It's more binary. It's more, you can predict what's going to happen there, Then there's very little left, even mental energy, very little left to think about people, the user. And it's so easy to just apply this abstraction layer and then just go, man, users, I know what they're doing it. You can't fix stupid. That's the user. What do you want, right? But I think that's contributing to the problem. No, the user, the employee in finance, in M&A, in R&D, they're not stupid. They're actually quite smart. Some of them have PhDs. They're really, really smart, actually. It's just as security professionals, we've been so busy with the technical side of security, we left this unattended and not really well funded. And you know what else happened, Jim? We had these vendors come to us and say, and I know I'm guilty of it. I used to be a CISO. I would buy one of those solutions, and the promise would be, hey, new school security awareness training. We've done it. We know how to make people your first line of defense by our training, the funny video, the insider person, the restricted access, the whatever, right? And then CISOs would pick up a magic quadrant from Gartner. Back in 2019, there was a certain leader, and interesting thing now, Gartner doesn't even recognize the company for innovation. So things are improving. What was in 2019, the leader now is not even recognized for innovation. Good, there's real innovation in the space. But the CISO would go to Gartner, hey Gartner, the user, what should I buy? Well, here's the leader. The marketing sounded good. The salesperson sounded good. The CISO will go, okay, well, I'll buy the best for my users, and then those funny videos would fall short. And the CISO would be left with nothing else to say, but yeah, it seems like you cannot fix stupid. And then they've given up on it. But what we've seen with our customers today, the users are awesome if you engage them. And engaging them is not pushing out once a year generic training and phishing them every quarter and writing an acceptable report. That's not it, right? If you engage them, relevance plays an important role here. Perhaps you want to nudge them. Perhaps you want to gamify certain aspects. Perhaps you want to tie their performance. You want to measure and show them how they're doing. Your cyber IQ here, tie that to the privileges, to the controls, a bit of carrot, a bit of stick. The user gets it. It's a completely different dynamic. You engage them, and then what happens? Well, many of these people become an extension of your security team. They're now not working against you. You're in this together. And across the organization, you now have human sensors. crowdsource intelligence. These people are telling you what's happening. They're working with the security team on solutions. They're approaching the security team proactively. Hey, we have this project. Hey, we were thinking about this. Can we get some advice here? It's a completely different dynamic. And then all of a sudden, instead of a vulnerability, you now have a strong defense mechanism here. And that's why I think, going back to the, schools of thought here, Camp A, hardcore technologies, lock everything down, zero trust. That's possibly, I'm speculating. That's why we've never seen that work in practice with the organizations, with our customers. But we've seen there's Camp B, and Camp B CISOs think human-centric security. We're going to put the human at the heart of our security operations, and then we're going to build sustainable, workable security. Jim, that's where I've seen magic happen. And I'm obviously a Camp B security practitioner. I don't know about you. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think, I like a good blend. I mean, there's obviously going to be certain technologies that are always useful, email security, endpoint security, all the basic stuff that anybody should really have, encryption for your data. There's still people who don't encrypt the data. And I find that crazy. But you are right. Whenever I go into an environment to do InfoSec, and it's been the case now for a number of years, being a CISO and virtual CISO and working with a lot of different customers from a lot of different areas, I try to understand kind of like the culture of the business, the DNA of the business, the people. Where is it? Do you have people in London? Because the people in London are going to work very different from the people in Italy, and who are going to work very different from the people in Germany. But then you've also got like appetite for security. Development teams, for instance, they hate in many times. Any developers out here that love security, I love you. I really do. But a lot of your counterparts really don't love us. The view is that we stifle creativity and we stifle innovation. And I hear that a lot. And when I think at what you've said, it's all absolutely true. And I do some of that subconsciously. I try to understand the development teams. I try to understand journalists, for instance, who are under pressure to get their news stories out, and they sometimes have to use freelancers, for instance, and you don't want them sharing credentials, but then to get credentials for those freelancers can take a week or two. Whereas if you've got them in today and they're, say, a photographer to provide, you know what I mean? There's a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties, and profiling businesses is one of the things that I've known about for a long, long time. But I love the idea of being able to utilize, in many respects, technology to be able to profile the users as well and their habits, not only against kind of known risk factors, but also stuff that's kind of pertinent to that organization. Because as you know, being a CISO, no organization works the same way. You can't apply security you did in organization A and in organization B. There are principles, obviously, but it doesn't work that way. And so I love this idea. I mean, we're reaching the end of our time together, I'm keenly aware. And one thing that I really want to do is kind of ask, I love this idea, but I could see that there being a bit of a concern from a user base who feel that they're being almost psychologically analyzed on a constant basis. You see quite a bit of people who push back against monitoring software. After COVID, when everybody was working from home, monitoring software went through the roof in purchasings. But there was a lot of pushback from I don't want to be analysed what I'm doing all day long and every day. And I do understand that. But then also you have to understand from the employer's point of view, they want to make sure that their users are doing what they should be doing. Your concept of human risk intelligence, do you get kickback and concerns from the staff members who feel that maybe that's too much, or they don't quite understand what's being analyzed?
A very, very good question. I'm so happy we got to this, Jim, because you did make me nervous a couple of times when you called it profiling, and I've been educated the hard way. That's not that you cannot do that in the US. That's okay, but we serve customers in Europe, central banks, the homeland of the GDPR, the birthplace, being educated by some hardcore DPOs. You don't do profiling. There is a fine line. You're absolutely right. The organization has a responsibility a duty of care, towards their customers. They're entrusting you or your business partners with their data, their sensitive data. You got to make sure that that's well protected. So that maps back to the GDPR. At the same time, you want to ensure that you minimize or there's no real impact to rights and freedoms of individuals, and those are your employees. So monitoring or profiling or it being too intrusive, there might be an impact there, right? So it's been a few years of building this technology, and we've learned how to walk that fine line where the security team gets value. It helps them predict things. It gives them that intelligence to be a lot more, I hate using both words, but what can I say, effective and efficient. And at the same time, making sure that there's no profiling, no monitoring, and it's not intrusive, and transparency. That plays a big role. So I guess the most recent addition to the product is something we call a Cyber IQ portal. So every user within an organization can go to their own portal. They can see their cybersecurity performance over the last 30 days. There's 5 levels. Everyone starts as vulnerable or determined, depending where you might be, and then they go on this journey to become armored, solid defenders, right? And then you see your performance. Jim gets an email, first Tuesday of the new month. Hey, Jim, log into your Cyber IQ portal to see how well you're doing, where you can improve. You click, you go there, you see, hey, well done. You're now determined. Keep going. You look at your behaviors. Oh, interesting. All right. Oh, yeah, you're right. That web violation, that wasn't me. All right. And then the malware infection, the USB. Oh, yeah. And then there's leaderboards and there's points, and managers get to see the performance of their teams, and they nudge and congratulate and push guidance out. So it's really that transparency, and users can take more responsibility over their behaviors. They appreciate now, Jim, that, hey, look, cybersecurity is important in this organization. And while I'm here as an employee, I'm expected to do these things. Okay, show me. It's taking the guesswork out for the user as well out of cybersecurity. Like, what would you really want me to do? That acceptable use policy. I'm not going to read that. 17 pages, all the content, all the newsletters, what do you really want me to do? There you go. These 9 things, these 13 behaviors. And here's how you're doing, and well done. And so, yeah, there is a way. We've learned how to walk that fine line. And great question, Jim. Thank you.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking about it from the other side's point of view as somebody who is kind of working in an organization that does take, human risk intelligence seriously and has the tooling and has the kind of countermeasures, not really countermeasures, but the ability to understand the level of security that they have. I think this is fascinating, but unfortunately our time has come to an end. But I did want to ask you that last question. So to all of you out there, I mean, seriously, go and have a look at OutThink. Go and have a look at the website. Just go and see what they do. Have a chat with Flavius if you're lucky enough to get hold of him. He's a busy man, as I've found, or some of his team members, because it really is. I mean, it really is a good technology and solution to really look at for environments that really want to be really careful about their security, and I think it's well worth looking at. I know I've been looking at it, but time has run to an end, Flavius. Thank you ever so much for joining us. And to all of you out there, thank you ever so much for coming and watching the video or listening to us on Spotify or whatever. Please feel free to like and subscribe. It is good for the algorithm. We've got more and more subscribers every week. I think we're on a snowball effect at the moment, and we're reaching all kinds of weird places, not just the UK and the US, but Mexico, Peru, even sort of Russia and a few other sort of places in Eastern Europe. And it's really nice to see people really engaging with us. So please feel free to DM me if you've got any questions, if you want us to cover anything, if you want us to bring Flavius back to expand upon the kind of human risk intelligence element and it really interests you, then please feel free to get in touch. And in the meantime, please look after yourselves, and we'll be seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much, Jim. It was great.
In addition, I do have a book recently come out, the Cyber Sentinels Handbook.
a primer for information security professionals. Now, this book is very much geared up towards professionals at all levels of their career, be they starters, be they newcomers, be they people who've been in it for a little while and maybe looking for a little bit more direction, albeit the older ones looking to maybe reground themselves in some of the more important aspects of the trade that maybe they've forgotten over time. I've had lots of good feedback from a lot of different readers of a lot of different levels, so please feel free to get yourselves a copy. We've got the e-copy, we've also got the paperback copy, and if you don't want to spend any money, you can go on Kindle Unlimited and read the book for free there as well. So thank you ever so much again. Look after yourselves, and we'll be seeing you again soon.